Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Representatives from Australia's Queensland Police say that they are investigating a mysterious, suspicious death this week after a New Zealand woman was found stabbed inside her rural coastal home. The case began at around 7:15 p.m. on June 15th, after police were contacted about a stabbing at a residence in the tiny town of Cooloola, Cove. They arrived to find the 58-year-old homeowner, Angela Gold, suffering from a single stab wound to her chest. Though emergency responders attempted to treat her, the injury was too severe, and she was later pronounced dead. Here's where things get weird. A man in his 50s, who was reportedly present at the time of the stabbing, was quickly arrested, but has since been released. Currently, he remains unidentified, with authorities describing him only as an associate of Angela's, who is not in a de facto relationship with her. One of the detectives in the case described the situation this way. Quote, "They don't live together at that address. He was frequenting the address to help her clean up." While the knife that reportedly inflicted the fatal injury was recovered at the scene, so far it seems authorities have not been able to establish the circumstances of the stabbing. What we do know, though, is that neighbors told investigators they heard screaming coming from Angela's home sometime that same afternoon before police were called. Another potential layer to this that has been reported is that Angela was formerly a victim of domestic violence. In fact, 2 driving offenses were dropped against her, and Queensland police were ordered to pay her more than $1,800 after a crash in March of 2024. The judge ruled that the officers investigating the case had not properly looked into Angela's, quote, legitimate interests as a potential victim of domestic violence. Unfortunately, right now it's not clear if any of this is connected to the fatal stabbing, and officially, the case remains a suspicious death. Those who knew Angela described her as lovely and energetic, revealing that she was a Jehovah's Witness who had lived at her Cooloola Cove home with her 2 dogs since 2021. At the time of this recording, the situation is still developing. Authorities in the Indian state of Madhya Pradesh say that they are investigating an absolutely heinous murder case this week after a man allegedly killed his own grandmother during an argument over liquor money, then attempted to cover up the crime by hiding her in a bed. The case began on June 11th when police in the city of Indore were contacted by a worried relative of 65-year-old Shanti Dhananjay. The family members said that they hadn't been able to reach her for a couple of days and that her house had been locked up. This was especially unusual because even though Shanti was retired, she was primarily the one raising 2 of her great-grandchildren, a 7-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. Well, it turned out that the 2 children were okay. Sadly, the same could not be said for Shanti. After receiving this information and traveling to her home in the city's Indranagar area, police made a chilling discovery. Shanti had been murdered and her body had been shoved into a storage container inside her bed. It wasn't long before attention turned to Shanti's grandson, 28-year-old Vikas Gohar. Gohar, who is the father of the children that Shanti was raising, also lived with her. Police learned that Gohar was unemployed and addicted to drugs and alcohol. His wife had left him a year ago because of these addictions, as well as his abusive behavior. Since then, Gohar had been entirely reliant on his grandmother, not only to raise his kids, but to take care of him financially. Shanti had been struggling to support all of them with the small pension she received from her previous career as a municipal worker. In addition to these details, authorities learned from the family member that initially contacted them that Gohar had been acting strangely before his grandmother's body was found. By the time they started investigating, he had attempted to flee to the neighboring state of Rajasthan. However, he was tracked down and arrested. During an interrogation, Gohar reportedly revealed the awful truth about what had happened. He said that in the early morning hours of June 10th, he had asked his grandmother for money to buy liquor. When she refused, he strangled her and hid her body inside that bed storage container. He did all of this while his own children were allegedly asleep nearby. At the time of this recording, police say Vikas Gohar remains in custody. He's expected to face formal charges once the rest of the investigation is concluded. Tributes are pouring in everywhere online this week for the life of a 46-year-old UK charity creator. after she was killed in a tragic and disturbing incident believed to be a case of domestic violence. The whole thing started at around 5 a.m. on June 17th, when residents in North London's Stoke Newington area were awoken by a massive earth-rumbling bang. At first, they had no idea what was going on, with one person later describing the noise as, quote, like somebody dropped a massive glass cabinet from a crane. However, the truth turned out to be much more unsettling. As concerned witnesses ran to see what was happening, they realized the source of the terrifying sound was their neighbor's home on Dumont Road. The residence's bay window had been completely blown out, and there was glass and debris everywhere on the street. Ominously, smoke could be seen trickling out from inside. Moments later, this was followed by shouts of, "Oh my God." After arriving at the scene, police would soon determine that the wreckage had been caused by a gas explosion at the Dumont Road home. Sadly, though, it quickly became clear that this was no accident. Inside, one of the homeowners, 46-year-old Annabelle Rook, had been stabbed to death. At the same time, 2 children who reportedly lived at the address, ages 7 and 9, were taken to a hospital, though it's currently believed they were not inside at the time of the blast. The final person treated was a 44-year-old man who is also now the main suspect in the case. While few details have been revealed about the motive behind the alleged murder as well as the lead up to the crime, what we do know is that the 44-year-old suspect sustained slashing injuries that were, quote, not life-changing or life-threatening. Police have also called Annabelle's death a domestic-related incident. Further unconfirmed details were provided by neighbors who spoke with the media, who described the situation as being the result of, quote, marital strife. So far, the 44-year-old male suspect has not been identified by name, though police say he is currently under arrest for suspicion of murder. The whole crime has an extra layer of tragic irony to it when you know that Annabelle devoted much of her life and career to helping women. According to reports, she was the co-founder of a charity called Mama Sue's CIC, an organization that supports migrant and refugee women by providing art, community, and exercise programs for them and their children. The charity is specifically tailored towards helping women in these communities who are fleeing domestic violence and human trafficking. In countless tributes online, friends and co-workers of Annabelle spoke about the dedication and passion she had for her work. A statement put out by her charity reads in part, quote, Annabelle was a profound force for good in the world, dedicating her working life to supporting women survivors. She started Mama Sue's to bring art, creativity, and joy to women who had arrived in the UK fleeing violence and human trafficking, treating everyone she met with warmth and kindness. The entire Mama Sue's community is in a state of profound shock, and we ask for privacy and time to grieve and process the enormity of our loss. Officials in Taiwan say that they were investigating a disturbing and mysterious case this week, following allegations that a young man had been confined in his home for nearly his entire life and deprived of many basic experiences and necessities. The whole thing was brought to the attention of authorities earlier this month when the man in question, identified only as a 21-year-old, for reasons that will become clear in a second, was found by a local ward chief in the city of Taichung. The ward chief, Su Yiqing, was concerned about the man's well-being, so he went over to him and struck up a conversation. What he learned was far more shocking than anything he had bargained for. In a series of social media posts, Su revealed that the man did not know his name and only seemed to have a rough idea of when he had been born. Though he knew he was 21, his behavior and communication skills were more consistent with those of a 10-year-old. The alleged reason why was heartbreaking. The man told Su that for virtually his entire life, he'd been kept confined by his father in their family apartment. He never went to school, he rarely went outside, and his birth had never been registered, meaning that he had no form of ID or official record of his existence. As if that weren't sad enough, according to Su, the man explained that after all this time, he'd been kicked out by his father in February. Since then, because he had essentially no skills or other options, he'd been sleeping in parks, stairwells, train stations, and places like the junkyard. He'd survived by eating discarded food and instant noodles. Su said that when he recently took the man to a restaurant, he had no idea what to do because he'd never been out to eat before. As crushing as all of this is, from the sounds of it, the 21-year-old is now finally getting the help he needs. Su reached out to other government officials who have set him up with temporary housing and are working to clear up the situation with his birth records and identity. According to local media, officials have spoken to the 21-year-old's father, identified only by the last name Huang. They allege that so far Huang has been fairly uncooperative, though has disputed some of what was said by Su in his social media posts. Specifically, Huang claimed that he never forcibly confined his son to their home. He also appeared to blame a lot of the issues that his son experienced on the boy's mother, who he said abandoned their family when he was a child. Currently, Taiwanese officials are still looking into all of the details surrounding the upsetting case, and have stated that fines and other legal action could be taken against Huang following their investigation. While they note that some offenses, such as abusing a minor, could result in a prison sentence of up to 5 years, that seems unlikely, given that the 21-year-old has already said he does not want to pursue charges against his father. Authorities in the Argentine capital of Buenos Aires say that they are working to piece together the details of an awful tragedy this week after a man allegedly killed his stepfather and attempted to murder his mother during the middle of a suspected psychiatric episode. The disturbing incident began at around 9 p.m. on June 13th, when police received a frantic call from Paula Yaslovec Gonzalez. The 49-year-old mother said that she had just been attacked by her 22-year-old son, Santiago Cole, and that she was in desperate need of help. When officers arrived at Paula's home, located in the Buenos Aires neighborhood of Lanús Oeste, they found her suffering from serious injuries. She was rushed to a local hospital with 3 gunshot wounds to her left shoulder, as well as multiple other cutting and stabbing injuries, several of which were to her head and face. Sadly, though, authorities quickly realized that Paula was not the only victim. Her husband, 66-year-old cardiologist Omar Humberto Parapunha, was found also suffering from gunshot wounds in a deck chair outside. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Following a brief search, police managed to locate Santiago Cole, who was found to be hiding in the attic of a neighbor's house. The 22-year-old was reportedly still armed with the knife he had used to attack his mother and proceeded to turn the weapon on himself. Despite inflicting potentially life-threatening injuries to his own neck, though, he was taken to the same hospital as his mother, and both are said to be in critical but stable condition. As for why all of this happened, that's still very much under investigation at this time, though multiple local media sources have reported there is widespread speculation in the community that Santiago suffers from severe mental health issues. Several neighbors stated that while the family had a reputation for being kind and friendly people, they rarely ever saw Santiago. Police also revealed that in statements made by Paula, she told them that the attack had started as the result of an argument between her and her son. It's suspected this spiraled out of control, which is when the 22-year-old grabbed the knife and gun and attacked his mother and stepfather. According to reports, Omar suffered a stroke last year and was still recovering, so it's likely he would have been especially vulnerable. Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of the whole story, though, is a statement made by the youngest member of the family, Andres. The 15-year-old, who is Paula and Omar's son and Santiago's half-brother, took to social media following the devastating incident and wrote about his sense of loss and confusion about what had happened. In an Instagram post, he wrote in part, quote, "I still don't understand why this ended like this. My brother killing my dad and shooting my mom. I can't believe it. I'll always defend you, Santi. You're my brother, and I know what you're like, and you would never do something like that. I don't know if you took drugs or if it was something else, but Mom's going to be okay, and we're going to help you." Police in the Thai capital of Bangkok say that a man is lucky to be alive after a dispute at a restaurant turned violent, and his survival may have come down to a small Buddhist amulet hanging around his neck. The whole thing began on June 12th at a restaurant in Bangkok's Bang Khan district. There, 50-year-old Thai businessman Pornchai was seated at table number 35, enjoying a meal with friends and colleagues. According to witnesses, Pornchai and a 28-year-old man, known only by his nickname O, became embroiled in an argument over a real estate bidding project. The two men reportedly disagreed over the financial benefits of the deal, and what started out as a heated discussion quickly escalated into something far more dangerous. As the dispute intensified, O allegedly pulled out a firearm and shot Pornchai in the chest, striking him on the left side. But what happened next surprised everyone, including police. The bullet struck the Buddhist amulet that Pornchai had been wearing, absorbing the force of the shot and preventing it from entering his body. Although Pornchai was still injured in the incident, the amulet, featuring the image of a revered deceased abbot, likely saved his life. Immediately after the shooting, Oh fled the scene in a white pickup truck as chaos erupted inside the restaurant. Customers ran in panic, overturning tables and chairs in their rush to escape. Some tables were left stained with blood, and a window behind table 35 was shattered from the gunfire. 2 bullet casings were later recovered near the scene. Officers from the Bangkok police station responded to reports of gunfire and arrived to find the overturned furniture, shattered glass, and damaged amulet with the bullet still lodged inside. The restaurant's owner, a man named Prasit, told authorities that many customers fled without paying their bills in the panic, something he said he understood, but he hoped they would eventually return to settle up. A restaurant employee told police that Pornchai and his business partners were regulars at the venue, often meeting there to discuss property deals, including apparently the one that led to this violent encounter. As for Oh, the suspected gunman, police say he later surrendered himself to authorities at the Bangkok police station. He remains in custody as the investigation continues. As a side note, in Thai culture, Buddhist amulets like the one Pornchai was wearing are believed to offer protection to their owners. One well-known story even tells of rival gangster groups who ceased fighting altogether after discovering that both sides were carrying identical amulets. While this incident ended in gunfire rather than peace, authorities and locals alike are crediting the small charm with preventing what could have been a fatal tragedy. At the time of this recording, Pornchai is reportedly recovering from his injuries. Police have not yet confirmed whether charges have been formally filed against Oh. Authorities in Indonesia say that 3 Australian men have been arrested and are facing incredibly serious charges this week, following a disturbing targeted attack on 2 of their fellow citizens, a crime that left 1 person dead and another seriously injured. The incident unfolded early on June 14th at a villa on the Indonesian island of Bali. According to reports, 32-year-old Zivan Radmanovic had traveled to the tourist destination with his wife Jasmine and some of their friends to celebrate Jasmine's 30th birthday. They had checked into their villa 3 days earlier, and everything seemed to be going well. However, that morning, everything descended into chaos. Shortly after midnight, a pair of gunmen pulled up on motorized scooters outside Zivan and Jasmine's villa. The exact details of what happened next have not been reported, but we know that within moments, the suspects opened fire. At least 17 rounds were fired during the course of the attack, which is alleged to have been targeted. Part of the crime was captured in harrowing footage recorded by terrified guests in neighboring villas, in which the sounds of gunshots can be heard going off one after another. When it was all over, Zivan had been shot and killed inside the bathroom of his accommodations, just feet away from where his wife lay in bed. At the same time, Zivan's friend, 34-year-old Sanar Ghanim, was shot several times and brutally beaten. Sanar ended up surviving, but was left with serious injuries. Neither Jasmine nor Sanar's wife were hurt during the attack. Thanks to details from multiple witnesses, including the surviving women, authorities learned that the attackers were also Australians. They told authorities they spoke with thick Australian accents and that they had overheard them struggling to flee the scene following the shooting. 17 shell casings were recovered at the scene, along with dozens of bullet fragments and a sledgehammer. In the immediate aftermath, a large manhunt was launched, and in the days since, 3 arrests were announced. It's unclear how the third suspect factored into the crime or to what extent they were involved, but the men have now been identified as former Sydney plumber 37-year-old Darcy Jensen, as well as 23-year-old Koskin Mevlut and 37-year-old Tupu Meidelmoor. According to local media sources, Jensen was arrested while trying to board a flight at the nation's main airport in Jakarta, while the 2 other men were taken into custody in neighboring countries, including Singapore. At the time of this recording, no information has been released about a possible motive behind the deadly attack, though reading between the lines of what police have said so far, it seems that the case could be linked to organized crime. Given how the crime was allegedly planned and executed, it has all the hallmarks of a gangland hit, and multiple media sources have pointed out that the surviving victim, Sanar Ghanim, was previously in a relationship with the daughter of a prominent underworld figure in Melbourne. Still, that's purely speculation at this point. Indonesian police say that all 3 suspects now face charges of premeditated murder. If convicted, they could be looking at a potential death sentence. Authorities in the Japanese city of Saitama offered a chilling update in the case of a missing woman this week, revealing that more than 7 years later, they have finally made an arrest after discovering the horrifying details of what happened to her. The whole thing began in early January of 2018, when the woman in question, 21-year-old Kaho Miyamoto, disappeared from her home in Ibaraki Prefecture. She was last seen getting off a train at JR Omiya Station in Saitama Prefecture on January 4th of that year. Shortly after, she was reported missing by concerned family members. At the time, Kaho's worried parents told police that they believed their daughter was in danger. However, before her disappearance, she had left behind a note saying that she had gone to pursue a live-in part-time job. Because of this, police had little to go on, and it seems the case struggled to move forward. It stayed that way until recently, when, by complete chance, a man was arrested on a minor theft charge in Saitama. The man, 31-year-old Jun Saito, was taken into custody for stealing a woman's phone while she was walking down the street. While some local media sources state that the actual offense happened in August of 2024, Saito apparently wasn't arrested in connection with the case until May 15, 2025. However, by this point, he was reportedly also suspected in a number of other pickpocketing-related crimes. This could be why, following the May 15th arrest, police were allowed to search Saito's home. What they found there was incredibly disturbing. During the search, officers came across a shelf in one of the rooms of Saito's apartment, where he was reportedly displaying 2 human skulls. These were taken in for analysis, along with a small collection of other human bones. Police now say that one of the skulls, as well as several of the bones, belong to Kaho Miyamoto. Things apparently only got more disturbing when authorities questioned Saito about the gruesome discoveries. You see, not only did the 31-year-old admit to killing Kaho, he showed no remorse and claimed that this is what she wanted. According to police, in chilling interviews, Saito stated that he had felt a desire to kill ever since he was a child. He said all those pickpocketing crimes he'd been suspected of were, quote, practice for random street attacks, but he had eventually decided that murdering a random person was too risky. Instead, he decided to start trying to find a victim that was already looking to end their life. In early November of 2017, he met Kaho Miyamoto through social media. When they started talking and she revealed that she was struggling with thoughts of ending her life, he felt that he had finally found the opportunity he was looking for. He instructed Kaho to leave that vague note for her family about finding work to make it seem like she had simply run away. He then met her at the train station where she was last seen and took her back to his house. Once there, he made her write a final farewell note to her loved ones before strangling her with a rope. Afterwards, Saito told detectives he cut her body into pieces with knives and a saw. He disposed of Kaho's cell phone, clothing, her SIM card, and most of her remains so that the crime wouldn't be linked to him. However, he couldn't help but keep a few grisly souvenirs, including her skull and some of her bones. This apparently wasn't the only reminder he kept either. Police say that while searching Saito's residence, they found one of Kaho's missing persons flyers hung up in his bedroom. At this point, I'm sure many of you are wondering, what about that second skull and the rest of the bones? Well, Saito apparently claimed that he had purchased these online as collector's items, though for obvious reasons authorities have their doubts. Currently, it appears they are still investigating the origins of these remains. As you might imagine, this week's update came as a devastating blow to Kaho Miyamoto's loved ones, who are still struggling to process the terrible news. In a statement, her family wrote in part, quote, "We are filled with disbelief and do not want to believe this. She was a serious and kind child who cared for others. We wish to quietly remember our daughter as a family." At the time of this recording, Jun Saito remains in custody. Formal charges are expected to follow. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.